This place where I used to work, it was located on a small boulevard, behind which was an alley which separated the businesses from a residential area. Typical suburban zoning, it was my habit to walk to the nearby deli to get lunch, and then find a nice spot in the adjoining neighborhood to eat it. Typically on a curb in the shade of a tree. One day, while looking for a likely place, I noticed a tree whipping about much the way they do when winds come heralding an approaching rainstorm. But this was a warm, still, sunny day with not a cloud in the sky. I looked at the surrounding trees and shrubs, but all was calm. This one tree, and this one tree alone, was aggressively swaying to and fro, so I decided to sit upon the curb opposite it and observe the situation to see if I could determine the source of the activity. As I watched, it became clear that there was no external wind which shook the leaves and branches. And indeed, there was no single direction in which they moved. It was as though a being was cavorting in, through, and around the tree, never going so low as to disturb the grass or roil the dust in the gutter below, but content to remain up in the branches, twisting itself this way and that, seemingly delighting in making the leaves and branches flutter. I tried to see if I could use the movements to determine the directions the being was traveling, the course which it took, and so by doing get an idea as to its shape and form. But it was not possible. So I resigned to sit and eat my lunch as I watched the extraordinary display. When my break was over, I went back to work, leaving the tree unabatedly dancing. The next day, I returned to see if it was still there, and was not disappointed. I tried to communicate telepathically with it, but didn't receive anything, nor saw any indication it was aware of my presence. It was like sitting in a park watching a child play blissfully unaware it was being observed, or watching a dog cavort about not knowing it was seen. The rest of the week, I would come and sit and marvel. I figured that what I was witnessing was one of two things. Either I was watching a discarnate being desperately trying to affect physical reality for purposes unknown to me, or what I was seeing was a small wind amusing itself. I came to accept the latter, because I figured that a soul, whether human or jinn, would recognize my attention and try to capitalize on it. But the being was blithely content to ignore me. I have since learned that such elemental incarnations are a part of the development of souls, one of the many rungs on an eternal ladder. I myself may have been such a force, learning my lessons as I assert myself over my environment, playing with clouds and birds and trees and fallen leaves, whipping the waters to froth, or gently rippling their surface. Astoundingly enough, I got bored and took to finding someplace less roilsome to have my lunch. In retrospect, it was my inability to interact with it that lost my interest. Curiously, I never approached it, never stood beneath the tree as its leaves and branches spasmed about, and recall that, then as now, I felt honored to witness a wind at play, to have been given evidence that there is more, and that it was not for me to intrude. To this day, many decades later,